The entire restaurant went silent when the $5,000 vase shattered against the wall. Jacob Sterling, the city's most ruthless billionaire, stood over his screaming 9-year-old daughter, his face purple with rage. 3 nannies had quit that week. The manager was shaking in his boots. No one dared to breathe, let alone intervene. They all knew that one wrong move meant losing their jobs, or worse. But then, Soraya, a waitress with $4 in her bank account and nothing left to lose, did something that made the entire room gasp. She didn't bring a mop. She didn't call security. She walked right into the lion's den. What happened next didn't just save the dinner. It exposed a dark secret that the Sterling family had been hiding for years. This is the story of how a waitress did the impossible. The atmosphere inside Le Palais, New York's most exclusive dining establishment, was usually one of hushed reverence. It was a place where deals worth millions were signed on napkins, and where the truffle risotto cost more than most people's monthly rent. But tonight, the air didn't smell like expensive wine or aged steak. It smelled like fear. Soraya Miller adjusted her apron, wincing as a sharp pain shot up her left calf. She had been on her feet for 10 hours straight. Her shoes were worn through at the soles, and she was mentally calculating if she had enough tips to cover the electricity bill waiting on her kitchen counter. She needed this job. She needed to be invisible. Table 4 is arriving. The floor manager, Henri, hissed into his headset, his face pale. Code red. Everyone, look sharp. If a fork is out of place, you're fired. A ripple of tension went through the staff. Table 4 was reserved for Jacob Sterling. Jacob was the CEO of Sterling Dynamics, a man who swallowed tech companies for breakfast. He was handsome in a severe, terrifying way. Sharp jawline, ice blue eyes, and tailored suits that cost more than a car. But it wasn't Jacob the staff feared. It was his daughter, Bella Sterling. At 9 years old, Bella was known in the tabloids as the Demon Princess. There were rumors that she had bitten a governess, thrown an iPad at a pilot, and screamed for 6 hours straight on a private yacht. The heavy oak doors swung open. Jacob Sterling walked in, radiating an aura of cold power. He was typing on his phone, barely looking up. Trailing behind him was a team of 2 bodyguards, and between them walked Bella. She didn't look like a demon. She looked like a porcelain doll, dressed in a velvet dress that probably scratched. She had dark curls and large, dark eyes that darted around the room with frantic energy. "Corner table," Jacob commanded, not breaking stride. "And bring the sparkling water, immediately. No lemon. If there is lemon, we leave." Henry bowed low. "Of course, Mr. Sterling. Right this way." Soraya watched from the service station. She saw something the others didn't. The other waiters saw a spoiled brat. Soraya, who had spent 3 years studying child psychology before the accident that killed her parents and derailed her life, saw something else. She saw a child whose hands were clenched into fists, so tight her knuckles were white. She saw a child who was hyperventilating. The trouble started 3 minutes after they were seated. "I don't want it!" Bella screamed. The sound tore through the elegant piano music like a chainsaw. "Bella, sit down!" Jacob snapped, not looking up from his phone. "Eat the bread." "It tastes like dust. I hate it. I hate you." Crash. Bella swept the bread basket off the table. A silver butter knife clattered loudly onto the marble floor. The entire restaurant froze. Diners at nearby tables, politicians and actresses pretended not to look, but their ears were perked. "Pick it up," Jacob said, his voice dangerously low. He finally put his phone down. His eyes were cold enough to freeze hell. "Now!" "No!" Bella shrieked. She grabbed a crystal water glass, the one without the lemon, and hurled it. It didn't hit the floor. It hit the shoulder of a passing bus boy, shattering instantly. Water soaked the boy's uniform, and a shard of glass nicked his cheek. "Get out!" Jacob roared. But he wasn't yelling at his daughter. He was yelling at the staff. "Clear the area! Why is this service so incompetent? Can't you keep her water filled without getting in the way?" It was irrational. It was cruel. But no one argued with a billionaire. "I want to go home." Bella was sobbing now, a high-pitched, breathless wail. She began to kick the table legs, shaking the fine china. Henry, the manager, was sweating profusely. He looked at the waitstaff, panic in his eyes. Someone calm her down. I can't lose the sterling account." He shoved a waitress named Chloe forward. Chloe approached the table, trembling. "Hi there, sweetie," she said in a high, fake voice. "Would you like a color?" "Go away," Bella screamed, throwing a linen napkin in Chloe's face. Jacob slammed his hand on the table. "Is there anyone in this incompetence factory who can manage a simple dinner service? If she doesn't stop screaming in 10 seconds, I'm buying this building and firing every single one of you." The threat hung heavy in the air. Jacob Sterling would do it. He was that petty and that rich. Soraya Miller felt a cold resolve settle in her stomach. She couldn't afford to get fired. She had $60 to her name. If the restaurant closed or she was let go, she was on the street. She grabbed a fresh pitcher of water and a small bowl of strawberries. "Soraya, don't," Henri whispered, grabbing her arm. "He'll eat you alive." "Let go, Henri," Soraya said quietly. "He's going to fire us anyway." She walked out onto the floor. The silence was deafening, broken only by Bella's jagged sobbing. Soraya didn't look at Jacob. She didn't apologize for the intrusion. She walked straight to the table, but instead of looming over the child like an adult, scolding a subordinate, she did the unthinkable. She dropped to her knees. She was now eye level with the sitting child. This broke the first rule of high-end service. Never lower yourself. Jacob looked at her, stunned. "What do you think you're doing? Get up." Soraya ignored the billionaire. She looked directly into Bella's tear-stained face. She saw the terror there. The child wasn't angry. She was horrified. "It's too loud, isn't it?" Soraya whispered. Bella stopped screaming. She didn't speak, but she sniffled, looking at Soraya with wide, shocked eyes. "The music," Soraya continued, her voice low and steady, ignoring the fuming father 3 feet away. "And the forks hitting the plates. It sounds like fireworks, doesn't it? It hurts your ears." Bella's bottom lip trembled. She gave a microscopic nod. "And the velvet dress," Soraya said, pointing to the expensive fabric. "It feels like sand against your skin. It makes you want to jump out of your body." Bella's eyes filled with fresh tears. But these weren't tears of rage. They were tears of relief. Someone understood. "It scratches," Bella whispered. Soraya nodded. "I know. It's sensory overload. It feels like the world is attacking you." Jacob Sterling was staring at Soraya. His mouth was slightly open. He had paid top doctors thousands of dollars to diagnose his daughter with oppositional defiant disorder. They had prescribed pills. They had prescribed discipline. None of them had ever asked if the dress was scratchy. "Who are you?" Jacob demanded, his voice lacking its usual bite. Soraya stood up slowly, her knees cracking slightly. She turned to the billionaire, her face calm. "I'm your waitress, Mr. Sterling, and if you want your daughter to eat, you need to take off her jacket, ask the pianist to stop playing the high notes, and let her sit under the table for 5 minutes to reset." The restaurant gasped. She had just given orders to Jacob Sterling. Jacob stared at her. His face turned red. The bodyguard stepped forward, ready to drag Soraya out the back door. "Do it," Jacob said. The bodyguards froze. "Sir!" "Do what she said," Jacob said, looking at Soraya with a mixture of suspicion and fascination. "Take the jacket off, Bella." The dinner service that followed was the stuff of legend at Le Palais. Bella Sterling, the demon princess, spent the first 10 minutes sitting under the table, hidden by the long white tablecloth. Most parents would have been mortified. Jacob looked ready to explode, but Soraya simply placed a plate of plain pasta and a bowl of strawberries on the floor near the edge of the tablecloth. "She's an animal," Jacob muttered, taking a sip of his scotch. He looked at Soraya, who was refilling his water. "You're treating her like a dog." "I'm treating her like a human being who is overwhelmed," Soraya replied, keeping her voice professional but firm. "She feels safe in small spaces. The world is too big for her right now." Slowly, a small hand reached out from under the tablecloth and took a strawberry. Then, the pasta bowl disappeared. By the time the main course arrived, Bella had crawled back into her chair. She wasn't smiling, but she wasn't screaming. She was calm. She looked at Soraya every time the waitress passed by, anchoring herself to Soraya's presence. When the bill came, Jacob paid it with a black card. He didn't leave a tip on the table. Instead, he stood up and buttoned his jacket. "Waitress, walk us out." Henry signaled frantically for Soraya to obey. Soraya followed the billionaire and his daughter to the curb, where a fleet of black SUVs waited. Jacob turned to her on the sidewalk. The city noise was loud, sirens wailing in the distance. "You have a degree?" Jacob asked abruptly. I studied psychology for 3 years, Soraya stammered. "I didn't finish." "Why?" "Life happens, Mr. Sterling. My parents died. The money ran out." Soraya lifted her chin. She wasn't asking for pity. Jacob studied her. He looked at her worn-out shoes and the tired circles under her eyes. Then he looked at Bella. Bella was standing next to Soraya, her hand lightly clutching the fabric of Soraya's apron. Bella never touched anyone. "I have gone through 5 nannies in 6 months, Jacob said, checking his watch. "The agency has blacklisted me. Bella usually bites them by day 2. "She's not bad," Soraya said defensively. "She's misunderstood. I don't pay people to understand her. I pay them to manage her so I can work." Jacob pulled a business card from his pocket. It was heavy, made of gold-embossed cardstock. "My driver will pick you up tomorrow at 8 a.m. You're hired." Soraya blinked. "Excuse me? I have a job. I can't just—" "I'll pay you $10,000 a month," Jacob cut in. "Live in. You get a suite in the East Wing. Full benefits. And a bonus if the house is still standing after a week." Soraya felt the blood rush out of her head. $10,000. That would clear her debt in 3 months. It would change her life. I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Jacob said. "Or don't. But if you don't, she's going to boarding school in Switzerland next week, a place with padded walls." Soraya looked down at Bella. The little girl was looking up at her, eyes wide with panic at the mention of the school. Soraya saw the desperation there. "I'll be ready at 8, Soraya said. The Sterling estate was less of a house and more of a fortress. Located in the Hamptons, it was a sprawling modern mansion of glass and steel perched on a cliff overlooking the ocean. It was beautiful, cold, and utterly devoid of warmth. Soraya arrived with one battered suitcase. She was greeted not by Jacob, but by a woman who looked like she had walked out of a fashions magazine. "You must be the new girl," the woman said, looking Soraya up and down with a sneer. She had blonde hair pulled back so tight it looked painful, and her smile didn't reach her eyes. "I'm Vanessa, Jacob's fiancée." Soraya felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ocean breeze. She hadn't known there was a fiancé. Nice to meet you, Miss Vanessa. I'm Soraya. Let's get one thing straight, Soraya, Vanessa said, stepping closer. Her perfume was overpowering. I am the lady of this house. Jacob is very busy. You report to me. And regarding Bella, keep her out of sight. Jacob and I have a lot of high-profile events coming up. If she embarrasses us, it's your head on the chopping block. Do we understand each other? I'm here to care for Bella, not hide her, Soraya said politely. Vanessa's eyes narrowed into slits. You're here because you're the flavor of the month. You'll be gone in a week, just like the others. I'll make sure of it. Vanessa turned on her heel and clicked away across the marble floor. Soraya took a deep breath. She had walked into a war zone. She found Bella's room on the 3rd floor. It was huge, filled with expensive toys that looked untouched. Bella was sitting in the corner, staring at a wall. "Hey, Bella," Soraya said softly. Bella flinched. She looked at Soraya, then glanced nervously at a large teddy bear sitting on the bed. "Is that your favorite bear?" Soraya asked, stepping into the room. Bella shook her head frantically. She pointed at the bear, then put a finger to her lips in a shush motion. Her eyes were terrified. Soraya frowned. She walked over to the bear. It was a generic, expensive toy. But as she got closer, she noticed something odd about one of the bear's plastic eyes. It caught the light strangely. Soraya picked up the bear. Bella gasped and hid her face. Soraya examined the eye. It wasn't just plastic. Deep inside the dark pupil, there was a glint of a lens. It was a hidden camera. Soraya felt sick. Someone was watching this child in her own bedroom. "Bella," Soraya whispered, putting the bear down and turning the lens toward the wall. "Who gave you this bear?" Bella didn't speak. She just mouthed one word. "Vanessa." Soraya's heart hammered against her ribs. This wasn't just a job about a difficult child. This was a trap, and she had just walked right into the middle of it. Soraya didn't sleep that first night. She spent the hours sitting on a rug in Bella's room, her back against the door, keeping watch. She had placed a piece of opaque tape over the teddy bear's eye, telling Bella it was a pirate patch for the bear. For the first time in months, Bella slept through the night without screaming. The next morning, the war began. It started subtly. When Soraya went to the kitchen to prepare Bella's breakfast, oatmeal with specific fruit arranged in a smiley face, the only way Bella would eat it, she found the kitchen staff strangely hostile. Ms. Vanessa gave strict orders. The head chef, a stern man named Pierre, said, blocking the pantry, "Bella is to eat the grapefruit and dry toast. She needs to learn discipline." "She has sensory processing issues," Soraya said, her voice hard. "Grapefruit is too bitter, and the texture of dry toast makes her gag. If you want Mr. Sterling to come down here because his daughter is throwing up, be my husband. Otherwise, give me the oatmeal." Pierre hesitated, then stepped aside. Soraya had won the skirmish, but she knew the battle was far from over. Later that afternoon, Soraya decided to try something radical. Jacob was at the office, and Vanessa was out shopping, which Soraya suspected meant meeting with whoever was on the other end of that camera feed. Soraya took Bella to the immaculate white marble sunroom. It was a room that looked like a museum, filled with pristine white furniture and expensive abstract art. "We're going to make a mess," Soraya announced. Bella looked at her, eyes wide with fear. "No mess. Daddy hates mess. Vanessa yells." "Daddy isn't here," Soraya said, laying down a massive plastic tarp she had found in the garage. She pulled out bottles of non-toxic finger paint she had bought with her own meager cash. "And Vanessa is wrong." Soraya squirted a blob of bright blue paint onto the tarp. Then she stuck her hand in it and smeared it across the plastic. Look, it's squishy. Bella stared, fascinated. Slowly, trembling, she reached out. She touched the paint. A smile, small and fragile, broke across her face. Within 20 minutes, the demon princess was laughing. It was a rusty sound, like a bell that hadn't been rung in years. But it was beautiful. Bella was covered in green and yellow paint, swirling her hands around, expressing emotions she didn't have words for. Suddenly, the glass doors slid open. What in God's name is going on here? It wasn't Vanessa, it was Jacob. He had come home early. He stood in the doorway, staring at the destruction of his pristine sunroom. There was paint on the floor, paint on the windows, paint on his daughter. Bella froze. The laughter died instantly. She shrank back, waiting for the explosion. Jacob walked forward, his expensive Italian leather shoes stopping inches from the blue puddle. He looked at the mess. Then he looked at Bella. I can clean it, Soraya said quickly, stepping in front of Bella protectively. Don't yell at her. It was my idea. Fire me if you want, but don't yell at her. Jacob looked at Soraya. I wasn't going to yell. He looked back at Bella. You're laughing. Bella nodded, terrified. I haven't heard you laugh since your mother died, Jacob whispered. The cold billionaire facade cracked, just for a second. He looked at his hands, then at the paint. Is it fun? Jacob asked awkwardly. Bella nodded again. She reached out a paint-covered hand toward him. Jacob Sterling, a man who controlled billions of dollars, hesitated. Then, slowly, he knelt on the plastic tarp in his $3,000 suit. He took his daughter's hand. Blue, Bella whispered. Like your eyes, Daddy. Jacob closed his eyes, and Soraya saw his throat work as he swallowed a lump of emotion. Jacob! The moment shattered. Vanessa stood in the doorway, clutching shopping bags, her face twisted in horror. What is she doing? She's ruining the room. And look at your suit. This is that waitress's fault. I told you she was incompetence personified. Jacob stood up, the mask of the cold CEO sliding back into place. But he didn't look at Soraya with anger. He looked at Vanessa. The suit can be cleaned, Vanessa, Jacob said calmly, and the room can be repainted. But my daughter is happy. Do not raise your voice. Vanessa's mouth snapped shut, her eyes flashing with a dangerous venom. She looked at Soraya, and the message was clear. You just made a very powerful enemy. That night, Soraya found her room had been accidentally skipped by the cleaning staff. Her sheets were missing, and when she went to brush her teeth, she found her toothbrush had been snapped in half, childish, petty, but dangerous. 2 weeks later, the Sterling estate hosted the annual Summer Solstice Gala. It was the most important social event of the season. Senators, tech moguls, and celebrities filled the backyard, which had been transformed into a wonderland of fairy lights and champagne towers. The centerpiece of the event was the massive infinity pool, glowing with underwater lights. Listen to me, Jacob told Soraya before the party began. He looked dashing in a tuxedo, but he was stressed. Senator Mason Thorne is here. I need his vote for the merger. Bella needs to make an appearance, say hello, and then disappear. No incidents, no screaming. Can you handle this? She'll be fine, Soraya promised. She had dressed Bella in a soft cotton dress that looked elegant, but didn't scratch. She trusts me. I know, Jacob said. He paused, his blue eyes locking onto hers. I trust you too, Soraya. The air between them crackled. For a moment, they weren't boss and employee. They were just two people keeping a child afloat. The party was going perfectly. Bella held Soraya's hand and politely shook the senator's hand. The guests were charmed. She's delightful, Jacob. Senator Thorne boomed. "Whatever the tabloids say, they're lying. You're a lucky man." Jacob beamed. He looked over the crowd for Vanessa, who was holding court near the pool bar, looking stunning in a crimson gown. She was watching Bella with a hawk's gaze. Soraya took Bella to a quiet table near the edge of the patio to color. "I need to get a napkin," Soraya said. "Stay right here, honey. Don't move." "Okay," Bella said, focused on her drawing. Soraya walked quickly toward the service station. It took her 30 seconds. In those 30 seconds, Vanessa moved. Soraya was grabbing the napkins when she heard it. Not a splash, but a gasp. She spun around. Bella was gone from the chair. Soraya scanned the crowd frantically. She saw a flash of white cotton near the deep end of the pool. Bella was standing precariously on the wet edge, looking into the water. Vanessa was standing right behind her, whispering something in her ear. "No," Soraya breathed. She started running. She saw Vanessa's hand move. It looked like a gentle pat on the back, but Soraya saw the shove. Bella pitched forward. She hit the water silently. Bella didn't know how to swim. "Bella!" Soraya screamed. The music was too loud. The guests were laughing. No one heard the splash. No one saw the child sinking into the illuminated blue water except Soraya. Soraya didn't think. She didn't take off her shoes. She sprinted through the crowd, shoving a waiter with a tray of champagne aside. Glass shattered. People gasped. Soraya hit the water in a dive. The shock of the cold water took her breath away. She opened her eyes, stinging from the chlorine. She saw Bella sinking, her dress billowing around her like a ghost, her mouth open in a silent scream, bubbles escaping her lips. Soraya kicked hard, her heavy waitress uniform dragging her down. She grabbed Bella's waist and kicked for the surface. They broke the surface, gasping, "I've got you! I've got you!" Soraya coughed, holding Bella's head above the water. Bella was thrashing, choking. Soraya dragged her to the steps. Strong hands grabbed them and pulled them out. It was Jacob. He had seen Soraya jump. "Bella! Bella, look at me!" Jacob was on his knees, water soaking his tuxedo pants. Bella coughed up water, sobbing hysterically. She clung to Soraya, burying her face in Soraya's wet shoulder, refusing to let go. The music had stopped. The entire party was staring. "What happened?" Jacob roared, looking around the silent crowd. "Who was watching her?" "It was her!" Vanessa's voice cut through the silence. She stepped forward, looking perfectly dry and perfectly horrified. She pointed a manicured finger at Soraya. "I saw it." Soraya was flirting with the bartender. She left Bella alone by the edge. I tried to run, but I was too far away. A murmur went through the crowd. The nanny was negligent. The help was flirting. Soraya pushed her wet hair out of her face. She was shaking from the cold and the adrenaline. She looked up at Vanessa. "You're a liar," Soraya said, her voice shaking but loud. "Excuse me?" Vanessa gasped. "Jacob, are you going to let her speak to me like that? After she almost drowned your daughter?" Jacob looked at Soraya. Soraya was shivering, her uniform clinging to her body, holding his daughter as if her own life depended on it. Then he looked at Vanessa. Vanessa's eyes were hard, triumphant. "Daddy." Bella's voice was a croak. Jacob looked down. "Yes, baby?" "Vanessa," Bella whimpered. Vanessa said, "Look at the mermaid." Then she pushed. The silence that followed was heavier than the water in the pool. Vanessa went pale. "She's delirious. She's in shock, Jacob. She doesn't know what she's saying." Jacob stood up slowly. He looked at his fiancée. For the first time, he really looked at her. He saw the lack of concern. He saw the calculation. "Get out," Jacob said softly. "What?" Vanessa laughed nervously. "Jacob, don't be ridiculous. The senator is watching." "I said get out," Jacob roared. the sound echoing off the mansion walls. "Get out of my sight before I throw you in the pool myself!" Vanessa recoiled. She looked around, realizing she had lost the room. With a huff of indignation, she gathered her skirts and stormed off toward the house. Jacob turned back to Soraya. He took off his tuxedo jacket and wrapped it around Soraya's shivering shoulders. "Are you okay?" he asked, ignoring the hundreds of guests watching them. "I'm fine," Soraya chattered. "Just check Bella's lungs." Jacob lifted Soraya up, then lifted Bella. "Meeting adjourned," he called out to the guests. "The party is over." He carried his daughter inside, with Soraya walking right beside him. For 3 days following the pool incident, the house was peaceful. Vanessa had gone to stay at a hotel to give them space, though she hadn't returned the engagement ring. The dynamic in the house shifted. Jacob stopped eating dinner in his study. He started eating in the kitchen with Soraya and Bella. He started smiling. One evening, after Bella had gone to sleep, Soraya was in the library, tidying up books. Jacob walked in. He was holding 2 glasses of wine. "You're off the clock, Soraya," he said, handing her a glass. "I'm never really off the clock," she smiled, taking it. "You saved her life," Jacob said, leaning against the mahogany desk. "I haven't properly thanked you. I was so blind. I thought providing money was enough. I didn't see that my own house was a war zone for her." "You see it now," Soraya said softly. Jacob stepped closer. The air in the library grew heavy and warm. He reached out and tucked a stray lock of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered on her cheek. "You're different, Soraya," he murmured. "You don't care about the money. You don't care about the status. Who are you, really?" "Just a waitress," she whispered. "No," Jacob said, leaning in. His eyes searched hers. "You're the woman who did the impossible." Their faces were inches apart. Soraya's heart hammered. She wanted him to kiss her. She wanted it more than she had ever wanted anything. Crash. The library doors burst open. It wasn't Vanessa, it was the police. Detective Mason Thorne, no relation to the senator, stepped in, followed by 2 uniformed officers and a smug-looking Vanessa. "Step away from the suspect, Mr. Sterling," Detective Thorne said, his hand on his holster. Jacob whipped around, placing himself between Soraya and the police. "What is the meaning of this? Do you know who I am?" "We know who you are, sir," the detective said, "but we received a call from your fiancée regarding a grand larceny." "What?" Jacob looked at Vanessa. Vanessa stepped forward, wearing a look of sorrowful vindication. "Oh, Jacob, I tried to tell you. I knew something was wrong. I checked the safe tonight. The sterling diamond, your mother's ring, is gone." "That's impossible," Jacob said. "Only I have the combination." "And the staff," Vanessa said. "Specifically, the staff who has been spending a lot of time in here." She pointed at Soraya. "We asked the officers to search her room." "You searched my room?" Soraya gasped. One of the officers stepped forward, holding a clear evidence bag. Inside, glittering under the library lights, was a massive, vintage diamond ring. "We found this taped under the drawer of her nightstand," the officer said. Soraya felt the world spin. No, I've never seen that before. She planted it." Jacob stared at the bag. He looked at the ring. It was his most prized possession, the ring he was planning to give to the woman he truly loved one day. He looked at Soraya. His eyes were wide, confused. "Soraya?" he asked. The trust was fracturing. The evidence was physical. It was right there. "Jacob, please," Soraya begged, tears springing to her eyes. "I didn't take it. You know me. I wouldn't." "He doesn't know you," Vanessa interjected smoothly. "He's known you for 3 weeks. You're a waitress with a mountain of debt. We checked your financials, Soraya. You're $60,000 in debt from your parents' medical bills. You needed the money. It's the oldest story in the book." Jacob stiffened. He didn't know about the debt. Soraya hadn't told him. "Is that true?" Jacob asked, his voice dropping to that terrifying coldness from the first night at the restaurant. "Are you in debt?" "Yes, but—" "And you didn't tell me?" "It wasn't relevant to my job." "Everything is relevant when you live in my house," Jacob snapped. He looked at the ring, then at Soraya. The walls were going back up. The billionaire was returning, protecting himself from betrayal. "Arrest her," Vanessa said. "Jacob!" Soraya cried as the officer grabbed her wrists and spun her around. "Jacob, look at me. Look at Vanessa. She's smiling. She did this." Jacob looked at Vanessa. Vanessa wasn't smiling. She had buried her face in her hands, pretending to cry. "Take her away," Jacob whispered, turning his back. "No!" Bella's scream tore through the house. The little girl was standing at the top of the stairs in her pajamas. She had heard the commotion. "Soraya!" Bella screamed, running down the stairs. "Bella, stop!" Vanessa lunged to grab her. Bella bit Vanessa's hand hard. Vanessa yelped. Bella ran to the police officer, pounding on his legs with her tiny fists. "Let her go! She's mine! Let her go!" "Bella, go to your room," Jacob said, his voice cracking. He wouldn't turn around. He couldn't watch. "You're bad!" Bella screamed at her father. "You're bad like the others." The officer dragged Soraya out the front door. The last thing Soraya saw was Bella collapsing on the marble floor, screaming her name, while Jacob stood like a statue, staring into the fire, holding a glass of wine so tight it shattered in his hand. Blood dripped onto the floor, mixing with the spilled wine. But the pain in Jacob's hand was nothing compared to the ice forming around his heart. The holding cell smelled of bleach and despair. Soraya sat on the metal cot, her knees pulled to her chest. She had been there for 24 hours. They had taken her shoelaces and her apron. She felt stripped of her humanity. She wasn't crying anymore. She was just numb. She kept replaying Jacob's face, the moment the trust turned to ice. He had looked at her like she was a stranger, like she was trash. Meanwhile, Sterling Manor was descending into chaos. Vanessa was moving fast. With Soraya out of the way, she had booked a one-way ticket for Bella to the boarding school in Switzerland. The car was scheduled to leave in an hour. "Get up, you brat!" Vanessa hissed, throwing clothes into a suitcase in Bella's room. "Stop crying, she's gone. She's in jail where rats belong. You're going to school, and I am finally going to get some peace." Bella sat on the floor, clutching her teddy bear. She was catatonic. She hadn't spoken, eaten, or moved since the police left. Jacob was in his study, staring at the empty spot in the safe where the ring had been. He held a glass of scotch, but he wasn't drinking it. He felt sick. Something was wrong. The logic didn't track. If Soraya wanted money, why steal a ring she couldn't fence? Why not just ask him? He had offered her anything. He heard a crash from upstairs. Jacob ran up the stairs. He found Vanessa dragging a screaming Bella by the arm toward the door. "Let me go! I hate you!" Bella shrieked. "What is going on?" Jacob demanded. "She's refusing to leave," Vanessa said, breathless, smoothing her hair. "The car for the airport is here. It's for the best, Jacob. A clean break." "I didn't authorize the school transfer yet," Jacob said, his eyes narrowing. "I did it for you, darling. You're too stressed." Vanessa smiled, but her eyes were frantic. Bella broke free and ran to Jacob. She didn't hug him. She hit him. She pounded her fists against his legs. "You let them take her. You stupid daddy. You didn't look. You didn't look at the bear." "Bella, stop." Jacob caught her wrists gently. "What about the bear?" Bella ran back to the corner and grabbed the teddy bear. She ripped the piece of tape off the eye that Soraya had placed there weeks ago. She shoved the bear into Jacob's face. "The pirate patch!" Bella screamed. "Soraya covered it because Vanessa watches. Vanessa is the spy." Jacob froze. He took the bear. He looked closely at the plastic eye. He saw the lens. He looked at Vanessa. Vanessa's face had gone the color of ash. "It's a nanny cam," Vanessa stammered. For safety. I was worried about her." Jacob didn't speak. He turned the bear over. He saw the small serial number on the battery pack. It was a Stark Industries model, his competitor. But it was Wi-Fi enabled. "Get out of my way," Jacob growled. He marched past Vanessa, carrying the bear into his study. He plugged the device's IP address into his computer. He was a tech mogul. Cracking a consumer-grade spy camera took him 30 seconds. He pulled up the cloud history. He watched the footage from 3 weeks ago. He saw Vanessa entering the room while Bella was sleeping. He heard Vanessa whisper, "I can't wait until I ship you off, you little freak." Jacob's jaw tightened. But that wasn't enough to prove Soraya's innocence regarding the theft. He sat back, thinking. Vanessa had said she checked the safe. She said she knew the ring was gone. Jacob typed a command into his secure server. Vanessa thought she was smart. She thought she had bribed the security team to disable the hallway cameras during the theft. But Jacob Sterling was paranoid. He had installed a secondary, hardwired system in the baseboards of the house 5 years ago. A ghost protocol system that recorded specifically when the main system was disabled. He pulled up the footage from the night of the theft. The screen flickered to black and white. Timestamp 11:42 p.m. The hallway was empty. Then a figure appeared. It wasn't Soraya. Soraya was in the kitchen making tea at that time. It was Vanessa. She was wearing gloves. She tiptoed into the study. 2 minutes later, she walked out. She walked straight to Soraya's room, opened the door, and crouched by the nightstand. Jacob watched her tape the ring under the drawer. He watched her stand up, check her reflection in the mirror, and smile. It was a smile of pure malice. Jacob paused the video. He stared at the screen. The rage that filled him was so intense his hands shook. He had sent an innocent woman. The woman who had saved his daughter, the woman who had made him feel alive again, to a cage. He stood up. He didn't just walk, he sprinted. "Jarvis," he yelled for his head of security. "Get the car and call the police commissioner, now." The holding cell at the 19th precinct was a box designed to break the human spirit. It smelled of industrial disinfectant, stale sweat, and hopelessness. For 27 hours, Soraya had sat on the edge of the metal cot, her knees pulled tight against her chest to ward off the chill that seemed to seep from the cinder-block walls. They had taken her apron. They had taken her shoelaces. But the worst part was that they had taken her dignity. Every time Soraya closed her eyes, she didn't see the grey bars. She saw Jacob's face in the library. She saw the moment the warmth in his blue eyes had frozen over, replaced by a look of absolute disgust. He had looked at her not as the woman who saved his daughter, but as a parasite, a common thief. That look hurt more than the handcuffs. It hurt more than the hunger gnawing at her stomach. "Miller!" a guard barked, banging his baton against the bars. "Visitor, stand up!" Soraya didn't move. "I don't have a lawyer," she croaked, her voice hoarse from lack of water. "I can't afford one." "Not a lawyer?" the guard muttered, looking nervous. He unlocked the heavy steel door with a clank that echoed through the corridor. "You'd better step out. The captain is having a heart attack out there." Soraya stood up, her legs trembling. She walked slowly into the fluorescent-lit hallway. She expected a public defender. She expected a detective ready to grill her again. She did not expect to see the precinct turned into a war zone. Standing at the front desk, looking like a vengeful god in a wrinkled charcoal suit, was Jacob Sterling. He wasn't just standing. He was dominating the room. The desk sergeant looked terrified. 2 lieutenants were frantically typing on computers, and the police captain was personally holding a file, sweating profusely. "I don't care about your processing protocols," Jacob's voice boomed, bouncing off the tile floors. "I am telling you that this woman was framed. I have provided the digital forensics. I have provided the time-stamped footage from the backup servers. Every minute she spends in that cell is another 0 I'm adding to the lawsuit I'm filing against this city." "Mr. Sterling, please," the captain stammered. "We are processing the release forms now. It takes time to—" "You have 30 seconds, Jacob snarled. Then he looked up, his eyes locked onto Soraya. The rage vanished from his face, instantly replaced by a look of devastating shattering. He took in her appearance, the dark circles under her eyes, the stain on her uniform, the way she held herself as if she expected to be struck. "Soraya," he breathed. He crossed the room in 3 long strides. He looked like he wanted to grab her, to pull her into him, but he stopped a foot away. He held his hands up, palms open, as if showing he was unarmed, as if showing he knew he didn't deserve to touch her. "I'm out?" Soraya asked softly. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She felt hollow. "You're out," Jacob said, his voice cracking. "The charges are dropped, expunged. It never happened." "It happened," Soraya said, her voice trembling with a sudden surge of anger. "It happened, Jacob. You watched them drag me away. You let them." Jacob flinched as if she had slapped him. "I know. I was a fool. I saw the footage, Soraya. The hidden camera in the bear. The backup cameras in the hallway. I saw Vanessa plant the ring. I know everything." Soraya looked at him, searching for the man she thought she knew. "You believed a liar over me. You knew me. You knew how much I cared about Bella. And you still thought I would steal from you?" "I was scared," Jacob whispered, oblivious to the police officers watching the soap opera unfold. "Everyone steals from me, Soraya. My whole life, people have only wanted one thing. When the evidence was there, I panicked. I retreated into the safety of my cynicism. It was easier to believe you were like the rest than to believe I had finally found someone real." He took a step closer. "I was wrong. I was so spectacularly wrong. Please, let me take you out of here." Soraya looked at the exit sign. She had no money, no phone, and no way home. "I want to go to my apartment," she said. "I just want to go home." "I'll drive you," Jacob said. "Please, let me do that much." The ride to Soraya's apartment was excruciatingly quiet. Rain had started to fall, streaking the windows of the luxury SUV. Jacob drove with a white-knuckled grip on the steering wheel. Every few seconds he glanced at Soraya, who was staring out the window, watching the city blur by. When they pulled up to her crumbling brick building in Queens, Soraya reached for the door handle. "Soraya, wait," Jacob said. She paused. "Bella," Jacob said. The name hung in the air. "She hasn't spoken. Not a word. Not since you left. She's sitting by the front door of the mansion. She hasn't eaten. She hasn't slept. She's just waiting." Soraya's hand froze on the handle. Her resolve to walk away, to leave the world of billionaires and backstabbing fiancés behind, began to fracture. She could hate Jacob Sterling. She could hate his money, but she couldn't hate that little girl. "Is she okay?" Soraya asked, her voice small. "No," Jacob admitted. "She's broken. She needs you. I need you, but she needs you." Soraya closed her eyes. She let out a long, shaky breath. "Take me to the mansion. I'll say goodbye to her properly. And then I leave." For good. Okay, Jacob nodded, pain etching deep lines around his mouth. Okay. The return to Stirling Manor felt different. The iron gates didn't look majestic anymore. They looked like the bars of a different kind of prison. As they pulled up to the circular driveway, Soraya saw flashing lights. Police cars. But this time, they weren't for her. The front door was open. 2 officers were escorting a woman out. It was Vanessa. She was wearing a silk trench coat and clutching a designer bag, but her composure was gone. Her mascara was running. She was shouting, thrashing against the officer's grip. "Get your hands off me!" Vanessa shrieked. "Do you know who I am? I am the future Mrs. Stirling. This is a mistake. Jacob, tell them." Jacob stepped out of the car. He walked around to open Soraya's door, helping her out. He stood next to Soraya, looking at Vanessa with cold, dead eyes. "Jacob," Vanessa cried, relief washing over her face when she saw him. "Thank God. Tell these idiots to unhand me. Tell them it was a misunderstanding." "It was a misunderstanding," Jacob said calmly, his voice cutting through the rain. "I misunderstood who you were. I thought you were merely a gold digger. It turns out you're a criminal." "What?" Vanessa gasped. "Grand larceny," Jacob listed, ticking off fingers. "Filing a false police report, child endangerment, and illegal surveillance of a minor. The district attorney is very interested in the tapes, Vanessa, especially the audio where you admitted you were going to send my daughter to an institution to get her out of the way." Vanessa's face went pale. She looked at Soraya. The hate in her eyes was toxic. "You," she hissed, "you dirty little waitress. You ruined everything. I had him. I had the money. I had it all." "You never had him," Soraya said, finding her voice. She stood tall, despite her exhaustion. "And you never deserved him." "Get her out of my sight," Jacob commanded. The officers shoved Vanessa into the back of the squad car. As the car drove away, taking the toxicity with it, the house seemed to exhale. "Soraya?" The voice was tiny, a whisper from the doorway. Soraya turned. Bella was standing there in her pajamas, holding the teddy bear with the patched eye. She looked like a ghost, pale, thin, her eyes red from crying. "Bella!" Soraya choked out. Bella didn't run at first. She just stared, as if she was afraid Soraya was a hallucination. Then, Soraya dropped to her knees and opened her arms. That broke the spell. Bella screamed, a sound of pure, raw relief, and launched herself down the steps. She collided with Soraya, wrapping her arms and legs around Soraya, burying her face in Soraya's neck. "You came back!" Bella sobbed, clutching Soraya so tight it hurt. "You came back! I told Daddy! I told him you didn't steal! I told him!" "I know, baby, I know," Soraya cried, rocking the child back and forth on the wet pavement. "I'm here. I've got you." Jacob stood over them, rain dampening his hair, ruining his expensive suit. He watched the 2 of them, the waitress and the heiress, clinging to each other. He realized then that all his assets, his stocks, his properties, meant absolutely nothing compared to the scene in front of him. Soraya finally stood up, lifting Bella effortlessly despite her own fatigue. She wiped Bella's tears. "I have to go now, sweetie," Soraya whispered. "No!" Bella panicked, grabbing Soraya's collar. "No, stay. Daddy, tell her. Tell her to stay." Jacob stepped forward. He looked at Soraya. The rain was stopping, the clouds breaking to reveal a sliver of moonlight. "Soraya," Jacob said, "don't go." "Jacob, I can't work for you," Soraya said, shaking her head. "There's too much history now. The trust it's complicated." "I don't want you to work for me," Jacob said intensely. He reached out and took her free hand. His skin was warm against hers. "I fired the staff. I'm firing the agency. I don't want an employee. I want a partner. Soraya blinked, her heart hammering against her ribs. What are you saying? I'm saying that I have $1 billion in the bank, and I have never been as poor as I was when you were in that cell, Jacob said, his voice raw with emotion. You are the only person who has ever stood up to me. You are the only person who has ever understood my daughter. And you are the only person I have ever looked at and felt peace. He squeezed her hand. I settled your debts, Soraya. Not as a bribe, but because I want you to be free. I want you to stay here, not because you need the money, but because you want to be with us. Be with me. Soraya looked down at Bella. Bella was looking between them, her eyes wide with hope. Please? Bella whispered. Soraya looked back at Jacob. She saw the vulnerability in his eyes. She saw the man beneath the suit, the father who was just trying to do right by his child, the man who had made a terrible mistake and was begging for a chance to fix it. You're going to have to learn how to make oatmeal, Soraya warned, a small smile tugging at the corner of her lips. Jacob let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for days. He laughed, a sound of pure joy. I'll take lessons. I'll buy the oat factory if I have to. Just the lessons will do, Soraya smiled. Jacob closed the distance between them. He cupped her face in his hands, treating her like she was more precious than the diamond ring that had caused all this trouble. Thank you, he whispered against her forehead. Thank you for the impossible. Then he kissed her. It wasn't tentative. It was a kiss of apology, of promise, and of overwhelming passion. It was the kind of kiss that signaled the end of the storm and the beginning of a life that neither of them had expected, but both of them desperately needed. Bella giggled, hiding her face in Soraya's shoulder. Finally safe, finally home. They say money can't buy happiness, and they're right. Jacob Sterling had billions, but he was poor until a waitress with $40 in her pocket showed him what real wealth looks like. Soraya and Jacob were married in the garden of the estate 6 months later. Bella was the flower girl, and she didn't scream once. She even wore a velvet dress because Soraya had lined the inside with silk so it wouldn't scratch. Vanessa is currently serving 5 years for grand larceny. And Soraya? She never waited another table again. She finished her psychology degree and opened a foundation for children with sensory processing disorders. Sometimes, the strongest person in the room isn't the one with the loudest voice or the biggest wallet. It's the one who is willing to get down on their knees and listen. If you loved this story of karma and redemption, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story. What would you have done if you were Soraya? Would you have forgiven Jacob? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.